Welcome to The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. Here's your host, the biggest record nerd of them all, Nate Goyer.
Well, hey everyone, it's Nate. Welcome to episode 499 of The Vinyl Guide. 499, one shy of 500. This is the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. And ladies and gentlemen, a very special week this week. We've got two guests, punk pioneers Alice Bagg and Kid Congo Powers, who are actually two of the loveliest people you could ever meet. And today we discuss a myriad of topics. We talk about the early LA punk scene, the filming of the Up in Smoke Battle of the Bands scene, the death of Darby Crash, the collectability of Survive, the Danger House bag single, and lots more. And we deep dive into their latest project, Juanita and Juan, which they describe as a loud lounge punk folk project. They've got a new LP, Jungle Cruise. It's available now on In the Red Records. You could pop open your mobile phone right now and listen to Juanita and Juan streaming on any streaming services right now. And if your local record shop doesn't have a vinyl copy, well, hassle them until they do. It's a fun spin, Jungle Cruise by Juanita and Juan. Now, before we start the interview, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention again, this is episode 499. Next week, I'll be sharing episode 500, and I'm pretty excited about it. So if you could all just please take a moment to check/verify that you're properly following the Vinyl Guide in your podcast app. In most podcast apps like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and whatnot, there's a little follow button. Make sure you're following it. That way you know exactly when the new episode is available, and you can enjoy episode 500 right away. So yeah, if you could just double check that now in your podcast app that you're following the Vinyl Guide, I'd absolutely appreciate it. And really quick, special thanks to our sponsor, Groove Washer. They've been helping support this show for many years now, and they make fantastic record cleaning products, which I personally use extensively, including the Groove Washer cleaning fluid. They make cleaning kits. They make the Groove Guard archive quality record sleeves, which are fantastic for protecting your records. So ask your local shop to stock Groove Washer, or you can go direct to groovewasher.com and you could use discount code VinylGuide10 to get a discount. That's groovewasher.com, discount code VinylGuide10. And with that, let's take a jungle cruise with Juanita and Juan, aka Alice Bagg and Kid Congo Powers.
Hi.
Hey, ¿cómo está?
Muy bien, gracias.
Hey,
Hi, kid.
how you doing?
Okay, how are you? I'm good.
Good.
You're all backlit and mysterious. The man in the shadows.
I'm just brown. I'm just dark.
Oh, very good. Well, I'm so glad to finally get the two of you together again. It was great connecting with you guys. One of my favorite shops in the world is Dr. Strange, and it was an absolute delight to see you guys play a set there. So this new album, Jungle Cruise, Juan and Juanita. What inspired this? I know you guys have traveled in the same circles for years. Known each other for probably decades. What kicked off Juan and Juanita?
Juanita and Juan.
Oh, Juanita and Juan.
Yeah.
Apologies. I've got dyslexia, so yes.
Well, I mean, what kicked it off, if you want to know what this project was me and Alice had known each other for years, and more recent years became friendly again. You know, we came from the earliest germ nucleus of LA punk. But we ended up on the same record label in the Red Records with our different projects, our own projects. And someone called him, a mysterious person from Hollyweird called Larry in the Red and asked if any of us would be, of me or if Alice or Kid would be interested to do a lounge song, a resort song for a scene on a Mexican beach, and they wanted whatever it was. They wanted it to have a Latin flavor, racist, no, Latin flavor, and,
Well, it was supposed to take place on a Mexican,
yes,
in Mexico.
yes.
So that's
So
probably
yes, yeah,
they wanted Mexicans.
and I couldn't help myself.
They couldn't have they got Chicanos.
We got Chicanos.
Were they trying to describe it? They were just kind of edging around it, like, "Oh, we need an urban rhythm."
Oh no! They said they needed a song in Spanish.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they said, and so me and Alice just went back and forth, like telling Larry, like, "Oh no, Alice should do it. She speaks more fluent Spanish," and she's like, "Oh no, but they asked Kid." And then
we both wanted to do it, though. We both wanted to do it, but we wanted to let the other person have the opportunity if they wanted to, because we didn't want to hog it.
And then Alice suggested that we do a duet, and then they bought that, and so then we were bound to make the song. So we made a resorty song that was very fun and really good. And they asked us to actually come after they heard it. They said, "Why don't you be in the show?" And so we did. And a great turn of events. That Alice was living in Mexico City at the time, in Mexico, and it takes place in Mexico, but they were filming in Puerto Rico. So I flew from Arizona to Puerto Rico, and she had to go from Mexico to Miami to Puerto Rico to pretend to be in Mexico.
So is this something we can see? Are you able to share what it is, or?
Yeah, it's been out. It's been out a while. It's on the Peacock channel, and it's called a show called The Resort, and it's episode 1, season 1.
The debut right out the bat.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you guys just had so much fun kind of doing this 1 or 2 tracks that you decided, well, let's do more.
Well, we thought we'll do something. Yeah, let's do something. I don't know.
But then we just talked about it.
We just talked about it. So what could we do? That's kind of something different than what we do. And then Alice got offered a show at the Broad Museum in Los Angeles, which is a great contemporary art museum. But they wanted a 40-minute or 30 to 40-minute set.
Now they originally wanted an hour, and I talked them down to 45 minutes.
And Alice said, "Oh yeah, we could do it."
I called up Kid and I told him what the offer was, and he's like, we could do it. And I said, "Okay, I'm gonna go out to Tucson for a month, and we'll work on the songs." Happen. Yeah,
and we made it. We made it happen. So we kind of, as the springboard was our characters from that, but we had also wanted to do some from the TV show, but we also wanted to do something that was very us, and we wanted to do something that was just kind of a crazier side of ourselves than we normally put. We wanted to be different than what our normal not expectation, but what our normal what do you call it? Our thing is
right.
That thing we do. that thing we do.
It's very autobiographical. I mean, just the songs. The Here Comes the Prez or David Bowie's My Gateway Drug. It's very much very clear. There's no mystery about some of that in the backstory. So that was the intent, yeah.
Well, I think part of it was that when Kid and I started working together, Kid had just released his book, and mine had been out for a while, but we talked about possibly taking this like scaled down duo and doing some book readings. And so we thought, we should include some of the stories that are in the books. So that's why, that's how that started to take shape. We were actually thinking ahead, like, what are some of these things that we can illustrate through music? Because when I first started doing book readings, like, I don't know. Well, it's going to be 15 years now since my book came out. But when I first started doing book readings, I was really nervous, and I felt like I'm not a good reader. I'm not like a dramatist. I can't like act this out. But a friend of mine said, "Why don't you just do a song?" And that's something you're very comfortable with. So I started doing music in between each like little excerpt that I'd read. And that kind of relaxed me and helped me tell the story. And I think Kid had the same experience where when he started doing readings, he also started working in some music, and it helped kind of relieve the tension.
Quite honestly, Alice, I can't imagine you being nervous about anything. But
I do get nervous. I do.
Now, the sound of this record is loud lounge, punk folk. I found it very nice to just walk at night listening to it. It's very different than I think people would be expecting. I know there was the original brief on the project for the movie, for the TV show. Was that something that you felt, let's keep extending this? This is something we want to do in terms of let's go beyond what the original brief was.
Oh, definitely so. We wanted to keep it a duo. So that meant we were probably going to keep it, it seemed to work well with, electronic music and tracks and keyboards and, minimal guitar. For my part, I didn't want it to be heavy driven by guitar music, because that's what I always do. And Alice isn't usually playing keyboards, and these are, So this was good, and we decided we really wanted to have, tropical Latin beats. That was important to us.
And that was really different too, right? Like playing with these different rhythms and these different like types of percussion. It just opens your creativity when you get started with these different beats. It's like, we can go to a completely different place. You're not thinking in 4/4. You're not thinking rock and roll.
Is there a bit of a background story of Juanita and Juan? Is it like almost a mask that you put on?
I'll tell you, they're very clever with maracas.
Yes. Yes. We'll tell you that was where our song came from, the Eno song. But our name, I mean, what was the question?
Juanita and Juan.
I was practicing maracas.
Yeah. So,
our backstory.
Well, Juan used to dance at Chico's. He used to collect like cigarettes from the ashtrays and then resell them.
Yes.
But then he wasn't making enough money, so we decided that because we were already like hanging out together, and we decided that we were going to go and get our degrees in maraca playing.
Yeah.
So we went to the Juilliard School of Maracas, and we got our degrees. And then we auditioned for the Philharmonic, but they didn't want us. So we decided that we were going to work as lounge players.
Yeah.
That's the backstory.
So
Uh,
It's all true.
So Juanita and Juan, they're a married couple. They travel. They do.
They might be. They might be brother and sister.
Yeah.
They might be.
Okay.
It might be, but
Maybe the relationship will reveal itself in further recordings, future recordings. This is a project you guys are going to continue? Is there a Jungle Cruise 2?
When we write more songs, we're writing more songs. So yes, that will probably be the case. And we're having very much fun. The live show is really, taking shape and really, and being met with very good response, and so, we are bringing people to our side. Yes.
Yes, it's hard to pull them in. Oh, come on.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think I feel like people are just hanging out with us while we goof around. And a lot of the time, I just feel like we're having too much fun for our own good.
Yeah. We're usually much angrier. But then I thought about it. Luke, Juanita and Juan are pretty angry. They aftertaste. I mean, it's pretty angry. But
it started off angry. When we started writing together, sometimes I would send Kid these like little skeletons, little sketches of songs, and then, for him to build on. And I remember when I was working on Aftertaste, I started off like, oh, I'm going to brush my teeth with gasoline. I'm going to set your clothes on fire, just really angry. And then he wrote a verse and it was like, oh, honey, I was going to take you around the world. And it was all like completely diffused my anger. And then when I see him on stage, I try and get myself psych myself up to deliver these angry lyrics. And then I'd look over at him and he'd be like, looking at me with these big eyes, like, honey, I'm going to take you around the world. And I can't help but smile. It's like, there's no other choice but to have fun when you're on stage with Kid Congo.
Well, it's likewise. But also, the thing also with that was, I was kind of I'm a big Barry White fan. I love Barry White. I love him. For years, I have loved Barry White. I was even on a German documentary talking about how much I love Barry White. And so when she said that, I thought, like, what would Barry White say? And he would say, "Oh, baby," Yeah. I said, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna go."
Keep
that
selling
way.
the dream. Well, Juanita, it must have been there's got to be some anger because building a life around a PhD in maracas, it comes with some expectations, and if it's not happening, well, Juan steps in and says, "Baby, it ain't over yet. We're still doing it."
Shake that maraca.
So you guys worked together before on a Pink Monkey Birds album, That Delicious Vice. How long have you guys known each other? When's the first time you met?
Wow. 77? I'm imagining it was probably around 77. Yeah. I don't remember the exact moment when I looked in Kid's eyes and I'm like, recognition. But I do know that, we were hanging around the mask. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which only lasted like what, a year and a half, like 77, 78, and then it was the old mask was done. So,
yeah. But
so we've known each other, what is it, almost 50 years?
Yeah. So because at that time, there was really a handful of people, really. It was a basement full of people. It was the kind of first scene, and so even if you weren't, like really, familiar with each other, like really super friends or in the same group of friends, everyone knew each other. Everyone knew who everyone was, and it seemed like a lot of people had many different tasks to do. Alice was a singer in a band. I was a fan. I was a fanzine writer. Things like everyone had tasks. And everyone was kind of as important as the other person.
Absolutely.
Creating that.
I mean, I think that's the magic of the early punk scene in LA, was that even though different people did play different roles, like some people were, zine makers, photographers, or visual artists that were not necessarily having concerts, but you were contributing in some way to this community. Even if you weren't like, Kid and I were not in a band together and we didn't see each other every day. But when we saw each other, there was this feeling like we're on a team together. We're part of this community. So if like anybody messes with you, I got your back. It was always this feeling of support.
Yeah. Yeah. If anyone would mess with me, I knew Alice would beat them up.
when I read about the LA scene, it always astonishes me how diverse it was, and there are a lot of females, a lot of people of color, which isn't always the story of these music scenes, and definitely not like the punk scenes you read about New York or London or LA seemed to be very, very unique in that regard. What do you credit that to?
I mean, I don't know, but I kind of might disagree with you that the early punk days in New York or London weren't very diverse, because London with the mix of reggae music and that really, and dub reggae really influenced things. The earliest people like Susie and the Bromley contingent, Billy Idol, they the only place they could hang out was gay clubs. That was the only people that would, let them stay in their bar, and New York, very, very diverse, and a lot
Okay.
of women, as well. So, but LA, we can speak of LA because we were there. And so I think that this whole explosion of whatever music revolution, which actually it was, it was definitely something that wasn't there before, and it was very diverse in LA. Yeah, I think there's could be many reasons. It was youth centered, movement. It was the proximity of the amount of Chicano people or people of color that live in Southern California, but also it was just that the playing field was leveled,
Yeah.
for everyone. It was like if you were bucking the system or if you were going to be on the team, you were accepted, it was known you were some kind of dissatisfied with the normal, the status quo, especially in music. I will say every people were really really into music. That's the thing. We were, and the expression was coming out anyway. It's coming out.
Yeah, I think that another thing that doesn't get talked about a lot is erasure, and I think that maybe we don't know a lot about what it was like in the early New York or London scenes and how diverse it really was, because maybe people have been written out of the stories. Like I felt like at a certain point, LA's narrative was heading in that direction, and there was a lot of talk about these all guy bands, and there was a lot of talk especially about like this white males in the pit, which was getting a lot of media attention. And all of a sudden all the people of color, the queers, the women that had been part of the original scene were no longer talked about. And I felt like those were the people that really made the scene creative and original and had new voices that, not new, but voices that weren't being amplified and that needed to be heard, and that made the particular mix of music in LA more flavorful. Like if you have a stew and you have a lot of different spices from different parts of the world, just all of us bringing in our own thing, whether it's, an ethnic spice or a sexuality preference spice, whatever that is that we're bringing into it, enriches the end product.
Oh, well, look, and thank you for correcting me on that, because as a person who wasn't involved in any of those scenes, all I could do is read about them.
Yeah.
And maybe that's exactly what you're talking about, Alice. It's like the books that I'm reading focus on, primarily white males in that. And your book, both your books, paint a different picture as well. Even in the Punk Rock Museum, Mike wanted the very first thing people experience to see the diversity. And Alice's, your picture is just right there in the front, but there's also all sorts of different contributors before you even see the first exhibit.
Yeah, I have to commend him for that. I think that's really cool that, first of all, that he put my picture, but also that he deliberately set out to be inclusive, because from what I remember about the early punk scene is that it was very inclusive. And I feel like it still is in general. There are scenes that are probably, somewhat separatist and have like those negative elements of like mimicking the status quo, being patriarchal and stuff. But I feel for the most part, punk is bucking against that, and you're going to see it expressed on stage and in the audience.
Do you have any thoughts about a definition or how you define punk? Especially in today's climate, there's a lot of polarization about what is a correct response. I'm curious as to how you define the punk ethos at this point.
You want me to answer, Kid, or you want to answer?
You answer it and I'll answer.
Well, I feel like punk is about, it is about challenging the status quo. It is about having your vision about what needs to be improved and working towards it, developing a community that feels supported by you so that you can create real change in the world, but also inspiring people with your music or your words to not feel disenfranchised. Part of what punk does is makes you feel like I can do it, right? I can pick up an instrument and play. And that's just the spark of empowerment that a lot of people need to feel like, well, if I can pick up an instrument and play, then maybe I can make a change in the world that goes beyond this. I remember being on stage and feeling like I had control of my audience to a certain point. Like I'd move a certain way and their eyes would follow me, or I'd dance faster and they would dance faster. And then I looked out into the audience. I couldn't see the end of the room because it was all black, and I felt like, wow, as far as I'm concerned, this is like, the edges of the universe. This is how far this power of people goes. Like, if we are working together, if we are in unison and dancing to the same beat, so to speak, we can move mountains. And I really believe that. And I believe that that is what punk does for people. That's the legacy of punk in people's lives, the feeling of empowerment, of like, I don't need to have special training. I don't need to be, a senator to make political changes. I can do it with my voice. I can do it with my art. I can do it by moving people at this very ground level, grassroots level. That's my feeling of what punk is.
Yeah.
And I have a very similar take. I mean, the thing is that for me, it is a certain ethic really that I try to have, and I'm trying to. I can never express it because it's a little esoteric, but it is kind of to be honest in the music, even if I'm using humor or fantasy or whatever. It is an honesty to in the music, and to actually really, for me, to attempt to say, especially with lyrics, say things in a different way. So it's like, so for me, things always have double, triple meaning. I'm about like, but so but it is the communication. Number one, communication with people. That's what it is to me, and it's not necessarily a sound. Really, it's just an ethos. And so and just there's just punk became so many rules for me, and I just wanted to do whatever I wanted to do, but this is where my punk is that after I wrote my book and stuff, I just thought like, wow, I've done is only what I damn pleased to do in music, most even in life, but in music for sure, and that to me is the freedom punk. That's something I learned with punk, definitely.
I kind of think of, and I appreciate you guys sharing that. One of the things that's always seemed to be very core about it is the community, as you've said, and the participation. We were just talking a little bit ago about, it was a small group, but everyone did something. They brought their superpowers to it, whether it was playing an instrument, whether it was singing, whether it was making shirts or flyers or a zine or something like that. Everyone contributed to the benefit of the community. And to me, that is like foundational in kind of what punk is. And when I think about, I like to identify myself as a punk because that's what I like to do. I can't play an instrument. I can't sing. I could do a dopey podcast. So that's what I'm going to do and how I'm going to contribute to the community.
Yeah, indeed. I also think that it wasn't necessarily like that a bunch of super talented people happened to get together. It was just that a bunch of very open people who were kind of probably considered weirdos in their own community came together and decided to support each other, because some of the things that we were doing were in their infancy, right? And they weren't super developed. Like I remember the first time that a bunch of us went to see the Go-Go's play, and they were rough, they had good songs, but they were rough. And we loved them and supported them, and we knew like the Go-Go's had to exist. So we supported each other, even if we were not like in our finished state yet. We weren't the chef's kiss yet.
It reminds me, it's a bit like an earthquake. It happened so fast. You mentioned earlier it was like maybe 18 months and it was over, but it reshaped things for decades to come. It was just so, yeah. I mean, when you were in the middle of it during those 18 months, did you feel that it was as large as it could be?
I don't think I thought about that at all of what it was. I didn't think about what it was, because that was, in my youth, I was just living every day, and everything, like we said, everything was happening fast. There was always shows, there was always party, there was always something to do, there was always something happening. Out of town bands come. Yeah, it was just like nonstop and antics that were very drunk a lot of the time, and a lot of partying, a lot of celebrating life, really, in a nonstop way. Some of it got a little self-destructive, and some of it, but it was just. For me, I was just trying to live every moment and experience everything that I could possibly experience.
But you knew it was special at the time, or it was just another day?
It was another special day.
Yeah, I feel like every day felt like it was a year long, I feel like when we talk about punk, people think, oh man, they must have been doing that for 10 years because they have so many stories to tell. But it's that like every day was jam-packed from the moment you woke up until you fell asleep exhausted and then got up and did it again the next day. It was a time when we were just like, I feel like totally immersed in this punk scene and not just and it wasn't just going to concerts, it was like hanging out with each other, dyeing each other's hair, making clothes, stenciling your clothes, pinning them, or creating something,
or even for me, going to the movies with people, seeing films, seeing old films, reading books. We used to read books, and I used to trade books with people all the time and look at what people were reading and what records they had, and so it was just always, it was an exchange of ideas going, kind of beyond just for me music. It was like literature, it was film, it was all kinds of things.
But we didn't know it was going to have like any kind of long-term effect, or at least I didn't. I didn't think like, oh, what we're doing is important. I thought like, no, what we're doing is really fun, and I'm going to do it until I can't.
Did either of you go to the taping of Cheech and Chong Up in Smoke, that Battle of the Bands? Oh, you were there, kid?
I was there. As a matter of fact, at the Punk Rock Museum, they have some outtakes of the Germs, and there's an angle that they have several different angles that they show the same scene over and over. They shot, and they have one from behind, and you can see that I'm in the front row of the thing, and I had like a Ramones. Actually, I look like question mark and Mysterians and big black wraparound sunglasses, and you can see me there. So yes, I was there, and I would be in the movie if the Germs wouldn't have been cut out of it. They ruined my career in film.
Someone would have looked at that scene and discovered that. Who is that
star quality?
Behind that symbol. Yeah.
That is an incredible piece of film. For those who don't know, who are listening, the Punk Rock Museum, Fat Mike was able to get the Germs performance of this Battle of the Bands. It was never in the movie, but it was, I think Lou Adler had it. He didn't put it in the movie because they felt the audience wouldn't believe that the Germs were an actual band. So yeah, I left it out, but fortunately, Mike was able to get a copy of it and is playing in a loop in the Punk Rock Museum, the only place you could see it. They're not allowed to share that anywhere else. So I'll have to look very closely at it next time and see if I could spot you, kid. Okay, all right. Any other memories of that day? Because that seems to be like quite an event in the history of LA punk.
Not any, I think if you see that film, you'll know what it was. It was movie extra stuff, but it was a lot of our friends there, and we were encouraged to be as like boisterous as possible. So, you see people are really getting into throwing drinks at Darby's face and stuff,
Yeah.
but that was acting.
There
But it was also people were very into it. It didn't take much prompting.
There was Germs. There was Dills. Who else was on?
The Dills were on there. I don't know. Cheech and Chong. Yeah, were in it with their sister Mary Elephant or whatever it was. They were great. Cheech in a tutu. It's amazing.
Now, I'm fascinated by Germs. Alice, you were at the first Germs show, right?
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
What are your memories of that?
Well, my memories are that they, I remember seeing them as they walked outside before they went in to play their show. I was hanging out with Patricia, and we'd gone early because Nicky Beat was doing, he was going to be playing with the Weirdos, and they were doing a sound check. And I just remember them coming up with grocery bags full of snacks, which they were partially eating and partially throwing at each other. They were laughing, and we decided to go over and talk to them. They were very friendly, and they told us that they were the opening band. And, they kind of shyly said that they didn't know how to play. And I remember Patricia being like ever the, mature one, saying, "Oh, don't talk that way about yourselves. I'm sure you guys are going to be great." She gave them a little pep talk. And then we went inside the auditorium, and we realized that they were telling the truth, and they were pretty awful. Pat Smear, he kept turning towards the amplifier, making like feedback sounds, and Donaria was at that point. I mean, she actually in the Up in Smoke movie, she does play. Good. Yeah, she plays a lot better, but on that particular day, she was just kind of banging on her toms and wasn't quite sure what was going on. And Lorna was the same. She kept looking at Pat Smear and at Donaria, trying to jump into the song at the right place, but they all seem to be doing different things. And then Bobby Pinn, which is the original name of Darby Crash, was at the front of the stage, and he just sat down in the front of the stage and started pulling the groceries out of the bag, and then he would like eat some of them and kind of just make these like sounds. I don't know, wailing sounds. And he did get out some mayonnaise. He got out some peanut butter, and it got all over his chest. And then at a certain point, he tried to take the microphone and he started to rub it on his chest. And that's when the sound person just cut the power,
right,
and said, "Nope, none of that." And what's interesting was that like the audience was actually involved from the very beginning. Like as soon as they started making noise, people were either clapping and cheering them on, or like throwing stuff at them, like trying to like you've seen in films where people get Rotten Tomatoes thrown at them. It was that sort of thing. Except nobody had Rotten Tomatoes, so they just threw whatever. It was quite a dynamic performance, and it was something not to be ignored. So a lot of people at the end of their set, people were engaged. They were either booing them or clapping for them or screaming or something, but everybody was on their feet. So it was like a success.
Yeah, you had to react. What you couldn't just sit idly by. There's a couple of events that are part of LA punk lore. They're a bit tragic. I want to just see if understand your memories around them. The death of Darby, also Stephen McDonald's kidnapping.
What? I didn't even know. No, I didn't know
I don't
he was
even know.
kidnapped.
I haven't
Oh my
seen
God.
the documentary yet.
Oh,
okay.
I haven't seen it either.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he was abducted for about 3 months.
Oh my
Wow.
God. Oh, that's
Wow.
horrible.
I'm sorry for the spoiler, but it happens in Act 1, so it's
Yeah.
Oh wow.
it's available.
I've got to see this.
redcrossfilm.com/rent. He was abducted, and it was around that community. So I guess you guys weren't aware of that happening.
No.
No, not at all.
When was that? What year was that?
Yeah,
He was 13, I think.
So yeah,
I don't know. I mean, they got in the scene pretty young, so that might have been what, like early 80s? I don't know.
Yeah, he was dating a woman who I think was connected with Germs. I forgot her name, but she is the one who convinced him that he had to come with her, and they took him away for quite an extended period of time.
Wow.
Anyway.
No.
Okay, so you guys don't.
Sorry, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, so we don't know that.
Okay.
We don't know that.
Okay, so the death of Darby. What do you remember about the death of Darby? Was it a surprise? Was it something that I imagine it was shocking, but was it a surprise?
For me, it wasn't really. I mean, it was a surprise, of course, but I had heard talk about Darby planning his own exit. And I didn't give it a lot of credence. I didn't think that he would do anything like that. And I don't know whether his death was deliberate or an accident. So I think I'm just like, I don't want to put out any rumors because I feel like I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I was initially, I felt that he had killed himself, and I felt like it was part of creating his myth, which I thought was something that he was interested in doing. But and I was angry about it. I was angry at him because I felt like he did not have to do that. But as time has passed, I've realized that I really don't know. I don't know if it was an accident, and maybe he had those ideas, and maybe he just talked about them as a way to be shocking, but he actually would never do something like that. I had really mixed feelings when it happened. I really, I went from being really sad to being just angry, and feeling like I wasn't a very good friend because I hadn't helped, but also feeling like, there's nothing I can do because it's his choice. So those are that's it. That's all I can really share with you. I don't really know what happened.
Yeah. And for me, I was not real close with Darby. We were friendly, and we had a weird thing. We had a weird sort of friendship. I was not kind of a big fan of the Germs, or I don't have a Germs burn, or I don't have, I was not very close, but I was shocked to hear it, but I also was not shocked because I knew there was heroin involved. Before I had known, people were. Yeah. I was on heroin too, and I knew the people he was with, were taking heroin, and so in that kind of way, an overdose is part of the game. Really, it's part of the gamble that happens every time you take a drug like that, and so yeah, I won't say I was shocked, but I was very saddened to hear it. Because again, with a waste, mm-hmm. and it was a bit of myth making, and to some extent it worked. Yeah, I think didn't Elvis die that day, or John Lennon got shot or something?
John Lennon was, I think, like within 24 hours.
So kind of stole the show. But so I was saddened by it, because it just seemed like, is bad. It was because it was a gay person. I was sad because it was a queer rocker, you know, and and I could see he was a sensitive person for as bold, brash of a personality he put forward. For something, I just knew he was sensitive, and I'm not sure why I knew that, but I knew that. So,
Right. Okay.
that's
Well,
my take.
thank you for that, and we'll leave the dramas behind. Let's talk about something good: the records. Now, kid, you and I have talked before about your record collection and your continued hunting for records. Alice, do you still collect records? Are you a record collector? Do you have a bit of a collection?
I had a huge collection, but I sold it all when I moved to Mexico. I decided I was going to free myself from all my possessions and just take what I could carry in 2 suitcases, which did not include room for records or books, which, my other best friends. But I feel like, I consoled myself by thinking, well, I can, still listen to most of the music I like, and I can go to the library and use that when I want to hear something. It's an extra step. And I had a dream of like one day having all my records and books all around me and just feeling like they're my companions, But I did manage to live without them. And I still, in many ways, I feel like they're still with me, like they're like they've done their job in my life, and I can be apart from them. I'm trying to not have as many possessions. It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, we're just custodians of them for a limited time period anyway.
Exactly.
So the Bags single, Survive, Danger House, that's very, very collectible, very rare, very beloved. When that single came out, was there a celebration? Was there a party? Or was it just kind of came out and it was almost a non-event?
I don't remember any kind of party. You mean like a record release party or something?
Yeah, or hey, let's a show or something like, the box shows up that you start passing them out or anything. Do you
No, I don't remember doing anything like that. No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
And it's furthermore, it wasn't a time when like bands had that kind of merch. Like in those very early days, we didn't like set up a merch table and sell our own 45s. It was like somebody still had to go to a record store and get them.
Right.
I don't know if you remember that, kid.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
I don't think I did merch till the Gun Club had record, albums, I remember like thinking, everyone's like, don't you have t-shirts? And we were like, what? What? Why would we have t-shirts? Like, I had no clue. We were that DIY. We had no clue what you do. And also, yeah, but I didn't have a record out in the 70s, so I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how did the Danger House team find Bags? Do you remember that engagement happening?
They're just hanging out at the same shows. And it was just like, you want to make a record? Okay, yeah, sure, let's do it.
Okay.
And it was just like, there's a studio we can use. I believe it was like from midnight to 8 a.m. or something. I don't remember. It was just like the downtime, right? When nobody wanted to go in and record. So they got it either cheap or free. And we went in and we laid down 4 tracks. Everything happened in one night. We got everything done, mixed, and ready to go. And we just worked through the night. It was very quick.
So it feels like just a little blip on the radar, but it's such a pivotal record.
Well, thank you. I wish we actually did do other recordings that were lost along the way. But I think the very early scene was a time when people were still thinking like, maybe somebody is going to pay for us to go into the studio and make a full album. It wasn't until punk got a little bit, grew up a little bit. I mean, we were part of the infancy, right? But as it grew up a little bit, then it became more self-sufficient, and people realized, okay, the majors are not going to come in and sign us and pay for our tours, so we're going to have to, pay for our own recordings, press stuff ourselves, and figure out ways to finance our tour, which is when merch came in. So I feel like we weren't it was too early for us at that point, and we broke up before punk broke, right before it got really popular.
Yeah. Did you guys have plans for another single or more records after that? I know.
I think, we were recording more music. I think we wanted to make an album, but it got lost because it was one of those things where like somebody said, hey, I can get some free studio time if you come like during off hours, and which is what we did. But then we didn't own the recordings and didn't think to, sign contracts or anything. It was all just sort of a handshake and a smile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that bag single, to find one at a record fair or something like that, I'm sure you probably know this, it's $1,000 record. Does that
No.
Does that surprise you at all?
I know. I remember when it was $100 record, and I was shocked. I'm like, what? Yeah, I think I might have my record somewhere. I hope so.
Oh, you better find that one.
Oh, the Punk Rock Museum has the plate, so you can make some.
Oh yeah, they do. That was amazing that they have that. I have people have pressed bootlegs of it, and I do have a couple of bootlegs that people have pressed.
I think I have a bootleg. I have a bootleg copy. Yeah.
And I think it's kind of cool that there are bootlegs out there too.
Yeah, yeah.
But I understand that like a purist wants the real original thing.
Well, it puts them back like this is something that happened during the period, during the life. Like I like the pressings of Jimi Hendrix that were made while he was still on Earth, just because it's this connection that this is the only way I'd ever have it, right?
Yeah.
So
well, you're historians. I feel like you're you keep the story alive. You don't not only keep the artifact, but you keep the story alive. So that's important.
That's exactly what I'm trying to do, because my life I've collected these stories, this knowledge about records, and I'm the end is closer than the beginning now. I want to start kind of documenting it because someone 50 years from now may be interested in that information. I want to save them the hassle or misinformation. More.
Yeah.
I was going to say that, my record collection has been very big and it's dwindled. I've moved a lot. So that really, I just would leave it with someone, I'll be back soon, and I don't come back for 4 years. That's how my life was for much of the 80s and even 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I have a nice collection. I have a lot of 45s because I DJ 45. So I get very into collecting. And as a matter of fact, tomorrow I'm DJing someone's wedding because they like my old 45s. And so they, so I'm always buying records, but I'm also considering, because I'm getting on in the years, I'm considering, people are asking me if I want to sell my archives, which is, records is one of the things. And I'm like, oh, like, what? Do I have to give away my records? Like, what? I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that. But it's a thing to consider that. But the logic of archiving is archiving, that it will be somewhere that I'll actually still have access to it, and that it will be something for people in the future to study,
Yeah.
And so, and that way, maybe I don't need to have it in my house, unless, I'll keep 1 or 2 records I like to play. No, just kidding.
To get really morbid, kid, like I mean, can you think of like, I know that I can remember going to thrift stores and seeing like these like great albums in great shape. I remember seeing 78s, right? Like of all these like fantastic, rare musicians. And then I'm like, wow, why are they here at St. Vincent de Paul? Why are people selling them for a quarter? It's like somebody probably passed away, and somebody had to clear this up and didn't know the value of it. And now here they are, like, I can buy them for a quarter but I mean, I feel like we need to figure out where our stuff is going to go if we intend to leave it behind, or if we don't need it, to like get rid of it, because
So I've thought about this, and I've got a plan.
What's your plan?
Because I don't want to leave my wife a problem, right?
Yeah.
I don't, because this record, I mean, I love them. They have no idea, right? They like the fact I love them. That's about it. So I've made a deal with with a record dealer. We're going to look after each other's collection. So if he passes first, I'm going to go into his collection and make sure that it goes in into the right hands for the reasonable or right price, and then give that to his wife or widow at that point. And he's going to do the same for me. So we have a bit of a pact that we're going to look after each other's. Well, that's about the best I can kind of fit. Because otherwise, she'll, she doesn't know whether this Melvin's record is $5 or $500. So, get a buddy, make a deal.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's not be so morbid now. Let's talk about new and exciting things that we're doing.
Plenty of other things. Look, and Kid, since last time we talked, you've released some records live at St. Kilda, Melbourne, I assume.
Yeah.
When was that recorded?
In 2019, just right before the pandemic. Months before lockdown. Yeah, less than 4 months before. That was recorded in Australia I'm using Harry Howard and the Near Death Experience, the NDE, as my band, because that concert happened because Kim Salmon of The Scientists was releasing a book. A biography was written about him, but with him and about him, and they called me, because this is what Kim Salmon does, just calls me out of nowhere and has some crazy idea. This is how I met Kim. First, I'll tell you how I met Kim before we go into the, because it's a funny story. That I had met him briefly, I think, when the Gun Club came to Australia in '83, but I kind of don't remember. A little drunk, and then. But I got this. We were going to go on. The Gun Club were going on tour in the UK, and we were, getting known, there. And then I got this letter from Australia, or actually from London, and it was from Kim, and with a cassette of The Scientists, and it said like, "Hey, I think we met before, and I heard you're coming on tour in the UK, and I'm going to tell you right now that The Scientists are the band that's going to come on tour with you, to your support." And I thought, like, oh, that's good. And then he said, "And you better tell that blonde guy to save some booze for us, because we're going to need it." And that was his letter with this cassette with the music. And I thought, like, wow, this is very bold. This is very Australian. And how can I not say, of course, because then I listened to the music and it was incredible, blew my mind right there. So that's how I met Kim. Mm-hmm. So we're going back to like 84 or so, 83, 84. And then, so in 2019, fast forward, he asked me to come. He's going to put on a show for his book launch, and he asked if I'd come, but he couldn't afford to bring a whole band. So he asked if I'd come and make a band and do stuff. And I said, of course. I would never say no to Kim. I can't. And after that first one, and nor would I want to. But so he suggested that we both actually at the same time thought like, oh, the NDE, because the Pink Monkey Birds had played with them before on a previous tour. And anyway, so they were into it. We were all into it. So it was fun to make a playlist that was actually for Kim. We did some cover versions of Shangri-La's. We did Alan Vega Suicide Song, and just stuff that I thought Kim would like, and then some of my back stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then when we got there, they had this amazing recording facility, and they said, well, for X amount of money, we can record this, and it's on 877 tracks. I went like, oh, okay, that's great. I'll do it. I'll shell out. So I got the tracks, and it was incredible. It was a one-time kind of show. Great audience, great recording, and I brought it back to Tucson and had Jim Waters and me really worked on it to make it sound like a live record that I always wanted to hear, and that's it.
I love the fact that you guys are working and still being very prolific at this period. I think, some of the best work is still coming out. The Pink Monkey Birds, Sister Dynamite is a wonderful record. I don't know if you have plans to do any more solo work, Alice, but that record out of 2020 was phenomenal. And
thank you.
I know you're still working with Juanita and Juan. We hope to hear more from you guys on that. Any chance you guys would ever be playing Australia?
There's always a chance.
I would love that. I've never played Australia. I would love to. So.
And I love Australia. I have a lot of people there, and I'm going to throw it at our booking agent and see what sticks.
You got a lot of friends down here, so I'm sure you could wrangle something.
You think they'd go for our cookie stuff?
Oh yeah.
Our cookie brand of punk?
Oh yeah. I think Australia would be a great place for us. Yeah.
Oh, good.
100%. Well, plan it. You guys are always welcome to stay here. Plenty of records to play. And hope you guys don't mind dogs.
Thank you.
So
I'm a dog person. Kit's a cat person.
Okay. Well, the dogs will want to say hi at about 6 a.m. So just let me know. Anyway, look, that's about it. Do you guys want anything you want to talk about we haven't talked about?
No, just our record, but I don't know what there is to say that you haven't already said.
There's a record.
Go get it. It's really good.
It's on In the Red. Juanita. Sorry. Juanita and Juan.
Hey, wait. Now you gotta think of Babies on Fire. Are you familiar with that song?
No.
By the first Here Comes the Warm Jets album.
Okay, yeah.
The song Babies on Fire, and there's one of the verse starts, Juanita and Juan are very clever with maracas. Making their fortune selling secondhand tobaccos.
Got it. Okay.
So
Juan dances at Chico's.
Yes. It goes on.
Yes.
All right.
That's our backstory.
That's our backstory.
Brian Eno wrote your backstory.
Yes.
All right. Juanita and Juan, Jungle Cruise, In the Red Records, along with several other Alice Begg and Kid Congo Powers projects. Larry Hardy still doing God's work there. Both of you, thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Travel safe, and we'll see you when we see you. Hopefully down under at some point.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Bye.
Cheerio.
Okay.
Again, they're just absolutely two of the loveliest people you ever want to meet. We recently spent some time together at Dr. Strange Records in Alta Loma, California, one of my favorite record shops on the planet. If you ever get up that way, make sure to pay the doc a visit. And don't forget, Juanita and Juan, Jungle Cruise is available in the Red Records and at every cool record shop you know. And that's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate everyone who's sharing these episodes on social media, putting them in Reddit forums and Facebook groups. That is hugely appreciated. And we love those positive reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Keep them coming. And we'll be back shortly with a brand new episode, number 500. So until we talk next time, get out there and buy some records, people. Cheers.